Okay, now it's finally working. First of all, let me know if you can hear my voice okay, and if the music is too loud or if the music is too quiet. Both options I'd rather hear about. I'm gonna really quickly explain what this mess is about, because when I was preparing for this live stream, I accidentally started blocking in colors over my actual sketch. So yeah, I kind of screenshot it at one point and was able to salvage some of it. But this is just like me being in a rush and like really not making that much sense. So I'm just gonna try to work this into like colors that work. How is everybody doing today? Are you hopefully doing some art of your own while watching this? Hopefully someone is painting at least, or intends to paint later while watching this. That would be good too. Well, I probably shouldn't paint everything on a single layer when I have something this complicated looking. Maybe the dark thing should be here so that I can build up some sort of like light and dark contrast over here. Hello, Absinthe and Tuko. I didn't do a YouTube post at all because I did this kind of on a short notice. Will the process you use today be in one of your brush sets? Yes, Blueberry brush is in Brushes for Painters. But since you are a member, I can also like just shove a Blueberry brush into the membership downloads for this month. So I'm not 100% sure, but like the previous download folder for the membership might still be usable. The link, I know that it gets deleted in a month, but I think I posted that link well into last month, so those downloads might still be available for members, but I really recommend to download all of those process and color palettes, and if you want to download the high resolution artwork, that's there as well before they are gone. So this Blueberry brush, I don't know, I just love the feeling of painting with this, honestly. That's one of the main reasons why I decided to use this today. And I want to kind of explain what the reasoning behind today's live stream is in the first place, because I've been doing quite technical live streams recently. So for that reason, I really wanted to do something easy and fun. I don't know if this is gonna be actually easy. I mean, like the whole sketch already looks pretty difficult. Mikko punch me. No, I'm really not into that, even if it's done with consent. I can slap you though, if you ask really nicely. Sorry, I will read the other comments. Christine, hello, and Sammy. We'll be painting along with you today. Great. That makes me feel so much better. think for blocking in this could be like a lot smaller. That would just make this whole process go by much faster. I'm just gonna block in some like vibes and then separate the elements into their own layers later. While that is a bit of a faff compared to somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, that's not my creative process. Sometimes I just like to start a painting and see where it takes me, honestly. While obviously it's scary to paint these sort of things in a live stream situation, and I have some sort of confidence that like I will be able to figure it out. And if I won't, it's just a painting, honestly. If I do a terrible painting, I will get over it. This wouldn't make for like a really sexy YouTube title, and for that reason I probably won't make it, because if I can't get you to click on it, then literally there's no point in making the video if nobody watches it. But now that I have you here, and I do think it's worth sometimes talking about just like the failures. Like sometimes you just do bad paintings, and that's fine. And when you're a professional artist and you paint all day, every day, you end up doing a lot more bad paintings than somebody who just waits for the perfect idea and for all the things to kind of like perfectly align for them to do anything. And that can't stop you from making art. Because if I make a bad painting, then if, for example, I have commissions lined up. Right now, I'm working on a book cover. I still need to finish that. Like, even if I fail a painting and feel like, oh my god, I have lost all of my painting capabilities, like, I can't go into this sort of like deep dark hole and enjoy self-pity for weeks and weeks. I just don't have time for that, luckily. But I feel like that's not that much talked about, that you do sometimes make paintings where you're like, oof. Also, one thing that is just as common, weirdly, is that sometimes you make paintings that you aren't like super excited about, but then somebody else is. That you might have done the painting where you feel like, oh, that didn't go too well, and then everybody loves it, or like a massive amount of people love it, that you had no idea that that would happen. That's the reason why I always recommend that, like, post your artwork anyway. You don't know how people will react. Okay, JV is asking, what is the process you're going through right now to do this? The process is just like sky colors, I guess. It's a really easy, but also important starting point. I mean, if I do sky colors that I like, then there's already everything that I need to build mood for it, for the piece. If I know, for example, what the lighting is going to be like, then that is the mood decided for me. That decides all of the colors, that decides all of the lights and shadows. I only need to like do decisions on local colors. All of the light variations and shadow variations, they are already decided for me. If I have these white clouds that have a lighting that I like, then already that one single thing takes out a massive amount of decisions from me, and it allows me to keep the mood consistent. And honestly, it's just like enjoy the painting process more, because I don't feel like I have all of the options in the world open to me, that it's a very limited set of rules that I am then operating with. I think there's something good there. I don't like the cloud shapes, but the color combinations, I think they have some potential. I'm a sucker for like big Baroque cumulus cloud formations. Always. Those are always fun to paint, and I enjoy looking at them as well. There's nothing like going out on a run and then having these big after rain or before rain clouds gathering above you. Hello, Stofzando96. Welcome to the membership. I hope that we can see you on Discord. I will do a post soon when I do a new download set, and I will do a Discord invite link there. You can also see it in the posts before. It's the same invite link. Absinthe is saying, it's crazy since I haven't painted anything during the whole summer and spring. But you did stone carving. That's creative. So it's not really that different. The longer you do art, eventually you realize that it's all really the same. And not to take away from the difficulty of art, but I think that makes like learning art and learning like composition rules really satisfying, because then when you, for example, pick up oil colors or decide to do logotype design, all of the same rules still apply for how eye works in an image. I want to show this like one inserted image, because I don't think I will be using it that much, but often in these live streams I have reference images of the things that I am struggling with or I need like small detail callouts for, and I thought that it's kind of not helpful when I can't show that to you, so I wanted to show you the image that is currently on my lap. It's this one, which is they are making train tracks nearby, and that's how I got the whole idea basically. This is one of the train cars used for construction, and I just thought that like I wanna do a whole house on train tracks, and this just has like all of those like super cool like machinery bits in here, and I thought that this was like especially inspiring because I can just make whatever kind of garbage underneath the train car to fake the machinery, and it's really dark and low contrast anyway, so the most technical part I don't really need to worry about. But also, like, one thing that made this like less scary for me as a subject is that you don't see that much of these wheels. I think wheels in cars are always like incredibly difficult to do. So I wanted to do like something like this, and also like mimic this type of perspective for the train tracks, because from experience that I have done train tracks, they are so difficult. They are so difficult to paint and take forever. So I'm gonna keep that there to use if I wanna. Actually, I had that on my lap, but if anybody asks for the reference, it's this one. And that's how I use reference. So the reference that I use like very often doesn't look anything like the piece that I am working on. It's just like small details. Like, for example, those sort of like caution tape lines. I find those visually really appealing. That's something that I'm definitely going to include. And the various like mechanical boxes and chords. I'm not going to make this as contemporary looking, but I'll definitely include some of those details just to make it more relatable. Because even if you're doing a completely fantasy concept, people will still be using this world's rules to see them. Don't worry, Tuko, about the brush set. I will put Blueberry Brush into the next download set for members. I promise. And if I forget, like, please angrily remind me. It will happen. Okay. Maybe I should do a vanishing point. I always watched your video before I go to sleep. I wonder if you have nightmares narrated by my voice. What am I doing? I'm doing drawing guide. Okay. Haven't done this in a while. I completely forgot to actually explain why I'm doing this. I will get to that in a second. Sorry. If it seems like I'm all over the place when I'm doing these live streams and that my thoughts are just like jumping from place to place, that's honestly like pretty normal of me, like even in a normal conversation with my friends. My thoughts really just like jump around a lot. But especially in live streams, I think it's like even worse. Because I'm painting, I'm translating everything constantly into English in my head, and I'm trying to think about the design and the composition and then the technical aspect of just like rendering. I think that grid is very overpowering. Whoop. So I'm setting it in a lower opacity. I think if the perspective guidelines are really thick and high in opacity, they can really affect the way that I see the colors, because everything optically blends together, and especially with a grid, you have like a transparent green grid. Of course, it's going to push all the colors to look more green. I joined a bit late, but still in time for the rest of the painting process. We just started. I mean, we haven't done anything yet. That's 20 minutes. That's nothing. I have coffee. I'm prepared for a long session. Please. Just as I say that I'm drinking coffee, what is this? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. You're having like a highly energetic live stream and then your soundtrack just turns on you. I'm also going to just like roughly block in different elements and try to kind of like figure out the shape language, because everything I can clean up later. I don't need to put you all through that, but I'm gonna put you through the design process. So at the end of this live stream, we will have the same visual impact for this piece as it will have with all of the color edits and rendering, because this will probably take some time to detail and adjust all the perspectives and so on. Maybe I should keep these windows on their own separate layer for speed. So the point that I have tried to say now several times is that why I'm doing this painting in the first place is because I've been doing so damn technical paintings in, I think, the last 3 live streams. Even the bird thing that I thought would be just like fun thing to do between paintings, I mean, damn. Like when I finished that, I was just like, okay, I'm not this type of a technical painter. That's just way too crazy. So I wanted to do something like loose and fun, and something where I'm just figuring it out in the process. I'm gonna do a new layer for the vegetation stuff. Kind of roughly block it in here somewhere. Because before these plants are going to be anything, they're just going to be blobs of color. And if the blobs of color are in good places, then I can go in later and like put in some detail and stuff. I need to lock the line art layer so that I don't accidentally paint on it again. Because when I was like trying to do some kind of a color block for this earlier, I glued those layers together with different colors and then I lost the line art. So here we are. I don't know if anybody who like does drawing for a hobby or for a living would even call that line art or a drawing. But in my world, that's a drawing. That's as much of a sketch that I am going to do. I'm working on a layer underneath, and I'm just filling in all of these holes. Okay, hi Mikko. I started your course on Domestika and it's been really helpful. However, I've hit a point where I get stuck and can't seem to finish my drawing or achieve the result I'm aiming for. Do you have any advice on how to overcome this block? Okay, so you start a painting and you're excited about finishing it. You have all of these ideas of like what the painting will look like. Maybe you're really good at like pre-visualizing on seeing the piece beforehand before you even actually finish it. And then you have this, I don't know you and I don't know what's happening inside your head, but I'm just going to describe a common train of thought that a lot of people have. Get it? Train of thought. Sorry. That, for example, that here I am thinking that I am going to do this train that has living space in it. And it's going to have all these different cozy looking windows that are going to mix the aesthetics of trains that I love so much with little houses that I love maybe even more. But then the painting process happens, and the painting might have other ideas in that process, or just the way that the paint sets on this screen kind of spawns completely different ideas. Or it might be just the materials that drive the process somehow. Or it might be your inexperience with a certain technique that makes some area of your painting like not really what it was looking like in your mind. Then all of this excitement that you had for the idea originally, now it starts to kind of feel like, am I excited about this? Because it's not gonna be what I saw in my head. Like I can't do justice to this idea the way that it came to me. Your creative idea is always this sort of like not really real thing. That's why you shouldn't really put any value on anybody who says that like I'm really more of an ideas type of a person. I just can't paint. Well, everybody is an ideas type of a person. Like we see things like through this like tiny window, but that window has frames that are incredibly sharp, and that delicate thing that is your painting idea, you are going to have to reach out and grab through that tiny little window and pull that entire idea. It might seem like an impossible task, but you are gonna pull it through this side of that window. And in the process, every single time, take this from somebody who has been doing this professionally now since, I don't know, I was 20 or something. like 2 decades, basically, that every single time when you pull that idea through a hole that is smaller than your idea, it will get torn up in the process. You might only pull bits and pieces of that idea, and then when they are on your canvas, you kind of like clumsily glue them together. It's not going to look like exactly what you saw in your head. It's going to look like some kind of like a Frankenstein piñata piece that you put together, and it might look like it's smiling and it all has like limbs and stuff, but compared to that intangible, beautiful thing that you saw, you can tell that it has been mangled in the process somehow. Now, a lot of people will quit when doing this process. They are just like, oh my god, what have I done? Like, I should not touch a brush. I'm sorry that I ever thought that I could pull this thing through that tiny window into this reality. And then they quit. They don't do it. They don't show that like ugly Frankenstein piñata pieces that they glued together on their canvas, and they have nothing. But then there are rest of us, the artists, who face this same problem with every painting that they make, and they finish it anyway, and they show it to the rest of us anyway. Because without people who actually do that, we wouldn't have any paintings, we wouldn't have any art. We would just have people talking about ideas, and we wouldn't actually be able to see any of them. And when you do that for long enough, you start to appreciate the kind of cute and clumsy way that you glue the pieces of that beautiful creature together. Take, for example, every single animal character design that I have ever done that has a real world basis in reality, like any shark, or especially any like horse-like shape, deer, bear, any of those. I absolutely just enjoy that process of doing the gluing it back together and then looking at the reference material and laughing my ass off when I see just how far I have come. And I love it, the way that I piece things together. It's a skill that I have practiced and practiced for years, and I don't hate it. I don't think that I'm doing injustice to the idea. I take a lot of pride for the fact that I finish my paintings, despite facing that same resistance that every single artist faces. Now, of course, you get technically more proficient, and you will get closer to those original ideas just through that like repetition of practice. But trust me when I say it will never be the same. This will be either something that you are going to be okay with, or something that will make you quit art completely. And I think it's better to just not sugarcoat it. It's better to get over it so that you can get back to making those artworks and showing the rest of us those ideas that come to you. I think it's a little bit selfish to just enjoy the hypotheticals of what can be when you have an idea and you kind of just enjoy the potential of it. You are at that point in possession of something completely unique and something that only you can enjoy. I think inherently the act of doing any creative process to its completion, which means publishing it, showing it to others, I think that is a deeply unselfish act where you have to put aside your own ego and understand that you are servicing something bigger, something more important than yourself. I don't care if it's music or dance or what have you, but once you do it for long enough, you will realize that your art has purpose beyond yourself. And I don't mean some sort of like magical realization. The people who it has meaning to, they will contact you and let you know. Like those will be emails, those will be actual people on the street that say this to your face. I like the way that sort of like sculptural blobby paint strokes accidentally ended up looking this sort of like kind of rusty. It makes this non-cozy shape of this home seem a little bit more, I don't know, approachable. I think there's something relatable in everything that shows this sort of like decay in it. Paulina, how do you manage with pressure to make commissions in a very limited time and still keep creativity and joy in the process? Oh my god. You're asking the wrong person. I think it's really important to choose your clients well. Like, client selection is something that I wish that I had learned more about in art school, honestly. I'm very grateful for everything that my art school taught me, and I get that in X amount of years you can't really learn everything, but I have definitely struggled with client selection in my life, and just like knowing myself, like knowing your own creative process and what you are like as a person, that is super important. Because the danger is that you agree to a project and then you are like, you might think in the beginning that you are somehow on the same page with your client, because your client might also be one of these people who like very clearly see in their mind what the artwork is going to be. So think about what I just told you about the creative process. Now think about executing on that vision when it's not even you who are making it, when it's someone else that is supposed to bring this idea to life. You are not holding the brush, you don't even get to speak with the person who is doing the painting. every single day. It's just happening out there, and you might be sending emails at the worst of times. For my clients, I always insist that like we do Zoom video calls. So if an idea is that hard to bring to life from your own head, imagine how much more difficult it is to bring that idea into this world through someone else. So this is a conversation that I have with potential clients or clients all the time, that when we start this process, the best end result that can come from this is when I understand your project, I understand the message of the product, and I understand the end user, honestly. Like we can talk about your potential clients and who are we trying to reach with this artwork. That's going to give me way more information and better tools to execute this design than having someone list me that like they want there to be like 5 different ponies and flying angels and fairies like shooting machine guns in all kinds of directions. If I understand who is it for, what is it trying to say, then like those are always more important. But if a client is like trying to drop like a shopping list into my lap that like we need these items in one painting, then I can at least for myself say that like this is not going to be a good match. This person is going to get a better product and the kind of service that they are hoping for with someone else that is not me. And I used to be so afraid to say to people that like, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm the person for this job. But it's so important for my own mental health, because I really do want to make the paintings the best that they can be. It doesn't matter if it's just for me or for someone else. I really do want to like really understand the project and understand what is it for, and to do the designs based on that with the best of my ability. But if I don't get any that sort of like creative freedom, then I know that I can't do my job properly, and that will cause me a lot of like internal like stress. That's why I will never be that sort of like shopping list type of an illustrator, unfortunately for some people, but it is what it is. But I didn't used to know this about myself. I just thought that like there's something wrong with me, that I'm not able to like provide the kind of customer service that I should be able to do all the time, but I was just like not cut out for that. But on the flip side, when I do have clients that I am working with, and the ones that I accept, because I won't be able to like do all the jobs anyway, those are like the best. I truly like love working on those projects so much. Do you limit your layers when blocking in your color ideas? Yeah. I think it helps to kind of like really block in the different sections of the work process. So when I was like looking for those like greens, and just like the primary 3 different colors for this piece, I think in that phase it's really important for me to not worry about like layer order and so on, and just focus on, do these colors work or not, because everything else, like the clean workflow and so on, those all can be fixed. But if the mood is not there and the colors are bad, that's permanently bad. And also it's really difficult to get excited about a painting like that if you know that the colors are not working, and then you're still just like rendering some kind of a foliage area in your piece. It's not a great situation for anybody to be in. You want to be like basically excited about your work. And if you're not excited about your work, it's your job to be excited about your work. Anybody who knows me probably would assume that like I'm not that much into like horror movies or zombie materials, but when I was working on a zombie game, I would come home and watch one of the 50 different zombie movies to get excited about the topic, because I knew that the concept pieces that I was working on, they would not be good if I couldn't find a way to be excited about what I'm working on. So that was the job, to get excited about zombies. Luckily, you can drop the hobby whenever the project is done, but for that duration, that was my job. There are still things that like I cannot absolutely get excited about. Like for example, this happens quite often in concept art situations. For example, if somebody is working on a game and then they slap me a reference folder with tons of these like super generic looking like medieval fantasy paintings that could literally be like any fantasy artist who does that stuff. I don't mean somebody like iconic like Frank Frazetta or someone like that who has like immediately recognizable style, but just like super generic fantasy artwork. That to me is like, if this really is the goal that you are going for, I'm never going to be good at this, because I literally could not care like any less, even if I tried. I think it's just kind to say that upfront rather than take on a job that I would be bad at, because then everybody loses. I think to get back to that like sort of art block in the middle of a painting process, I want to emphasize that like it's completely normal and healthy to be excited about your painting when you get started, like when you have that idea, because all of those sort of like possibilities are in there because you haven't opened those doors yet. But when you are working on a painting and then you spend, I don't know, 5 hours on it, of course the new ideas are going to feel more exciting because all of those possibilities are in there. And you're always going to have this like, maybe this is going to be better, maybe that's one a better idea to do. That kind of promise of something better and more worth painting is always going to follow you. And those moments usually happen when we are working with an issue in a painting that we just don't have the skills to figure out yet. It might be some kind of like a really difficult composition situation where the composition is not working, but you can't really like figure out why that is. Like, why can't you fix the composition? But always in those moments, like, you should remind yourself that if you get through this and you finish the painting anyway, you will come out of it as a better painter. Because always when we encounter those sort of difficulties, we have a moment of like, either we are going to grow from this experience and be a better artist for it, or we are going to just start a new painting and then convince ourselves that like, maybe we just got unlucky with the previous one. Maybe the next one is going to be easier. I wish I could paint like you, but I'm not able to make myself sit down for long enough. Well, I love using like Pomodoro methods, and the great thing about Pomodoro methods is that you can really train yourself that patience with a already figured out system that is going to work for you. You don't have to like reinvent the wheel to train that type of patience for yourself. Other people have already done all of this research on this. So you can do, for example, let's say that you can paint for 20 minutes or 15 minutes in one sitting. Then you set a 15-minute Pomodoro timer, and then you have that break interval. And then you can do another session, or maybe that 15 minutes is all that you can do in that one go. But once you get comfortable with like doing, for example, four 15-minute sessions, that's already an hour of painting time. You can do some full paintings already with that amount of time. Or if you feel like you're more comfortable with the 15 minutes, you can start bumping it up to 20 minutes. 20 minutes is going to be a huge difference in 4 sessions. It's going to add a whole another like time block to the amount of time that you have to work on your piece. And then just slowly work your way up to more time. Currently for me, like when I'm feeling like really unfocused and like I can't really sit down and do a lot of painting, I have worked up to 60 minutes. So that I can always make myself paint for 60 minutes in one of these Pomodoro sessions. And usually after I have done 1 hour, I wanna have the break. It's important to have the break. And then keep going. Or sometimes I just let the clock count forwards. I love using Forest app. It's something that I have been using for years for work and for paintings that I do just for myself. Because paintings that I do just for myself, they are work too. Frexikind is saying, I think it's more about my lack of technique and knowledge. I mean, it's missing something, but I'm not sure what else to do. And I think this problem is like very common. And having taught art in concept art classes for so many years now, again, I'm not talking about you, just like talking about this problem in general. I promise you that somebody listening to me here is having this, that when they start a painting, and especially when you're in the process of learning art, which is the rest of eternity, but when you start a painting and your main goal is to learn to paint, then I recommend like seriously limiting the amount of new things that you are painting when you're doing this. Like, be aware that how many new things you need to learn to finish that painting, and always make sure that that list is as small as possible in the beginning. Like all of my like for example the art course that I did for Gumroad, it's very specific in starting with like one single subject and then expanding from that. And the building on foundations course that I added to that art course, that is multiple subjects. But the reason why it's after that first one, because I wanted to make it really clear that learning art is learning just like one thing and then progressing from that and only adding a little bit more complexity every single time. Now that I'm doing these landscape painting course materials, that is also very specifically like teaching one single technique in every video assignment, so that you don't start, how do I paint a house train speeding through a landscape on train tracks in a 3-point perspective with light temperature shown on white surfaces and sky gradient that is following the same light logic. Like, no. Take one of those things and do that first. Because when you have multiple things to figure out and learn in a painting, then it's so easy to kind of shipwreck your entire project when you're trying to learn too many things at once, basically. And it's super frustrating. Like, I can understand how that would be, like, incredibly frustrating. But think about any art school. Like, let's forget me for a while. Like, I haven't reinvented the wheel on how to teach art. The reason why in normal art schools art is taught in a certain way is because it works. They start from very single subject, very focused practices, and then go through similar, very single subject focused practices. It might be that the subject is very limited, or the technique is limited in some way. That is so that the students learn one thing and focus only on that, so that they can implement it in the next exercise that is going to have a one new thing added to that. But slowly their skills are growing to kind of meet that challenge. I think with the introduction of YouTube into art teaching methods, some people have this like false idea, which I don't support at all, is that you learn art by doing a picture and repeating it. Like, for example, an artwork that somebody else has already done. But that's probably a huge bundle of tons of different techniques, and you can't just like drop them into a lap of somebody who doesn't understand what they're doing. And even if they can repeat the image, if they cannot interpret the techniques into their own inventions, in their own designs, then it's not usable information anymore. Then it's just a repeated picture. No. And there's a reason why people don't teach art that way in art schools. At least, like, when I'm talking about art schools, like, I mean, like, in a classical sense, like how art at least used to be taught. Remember that the art school that I went to was for oil painting, so it was like very, very traditional type of art teaching. And honestly, the type of art teaching that I do with my students, it's always based on those fundamentals. Like, doing digital art is not in any way some sort of like completely new invented way to do art. Like, the rules are still the same. The eye works still exactly the same way in a picture. The eye doesn't care what material was used to do the piece that is in front of it. Tuko is asking, when you take your break, do you do something completely different to give your brain a break and be able to refocus on the next session? Yes. Very often that is going on a walk with my dog, Bibi. I think this is like the most general advice that I can give, that like whenever you're stuck with some idea, like go out on a walk. Like honestly, it's a miracle how many ideas or problems can be just like figured out by just going outside. I really use that like a system whenever I'm in trouble. But sometimes on a smaller breaks, I also do something that like will engage my brain like right away into something else. And unfortunately, I already played through it, but I really loved the original Rogue Legacy, because every gameplay session was really time limited because you die really quickly in that game. So, and it was like really difficult, so it was super intense. So I loved playing a few rounds of Rogue Legacy between painting sessions. That would really like take me away from the painting mindset and give me something else to focus on for a few minutes. Now I'm playing the second game, which is like, honestly, it's a better game, but the sessions are longer. Sometimes I need to just like set myself a timer on how long I can play it and then put it on standby, because the sessions are longer. I like that little bit of like accent color. doing chores during that break makes it a win-win. Yeah, I wish that I was that disciplined, honestly. I'm really happy that you can't see more of this workroom, but like I promise you that like every inch of this workroom outside this camera frame is just a complete mess. She treats fantasy almost as a crime, Absinthe is saying. Who treats fantasy as a crime? I don't know, me? Like obviously, most of my art is fantasy art, but well, generic to me is a crime. Hello Luna, welcome back to the mob. I assume that you have been a member before because you already have the bear badge in your name. And if you have been away, I recommend that you take a look at the landscape course tutorials. You can also submit your work on Discord and they will be featured in the feedback session. I just did a new video for that series not that long ago, so there should be a new feedback session soon. But I will seriously need to finish that water tutorial first. So the reason why we are doing this today is because the water tutorial paintings, like, they were just like painting Olympics for me, honestly. And by that I mean that like they were just really difficult for me. I mean the last water live stream that I did, where I have that lake or river and the small waterfall in front of it, like that's the most technical painting that I have done in a while. And to do that while doing a live stream, I'm really happy with the way that that painting turned out and the way that I was able to like cover all those like different points about how light works on water surfaces in the live stream, because like that was the whole point why that painting was designed to be so difficult. But at the same time, I'm really happy that I don't have to do that difficult of a live stream now. I don't know if I'm making it that much easier, honestly, with this train car, but it's not that painting at least. And with that live stream, I really wanted to show that like you don't need to have while it's good to have reference, and I always recommend having reference, but when you just like know the properties of light and water, you can just use that knowledge and do a scene that looks somewhat realistic. Like obviously, like the way that I am painting the environment in that is still using the same style that I have for environments, which is not like photorealism is not my thing, but I think the water in that scene looks realistic enough that if you used realistic colors, then you would have a photorealistic look to the painting, if that's what you're going for. Because it doesn't really make sense if I do a live stream where the intention is to teach a technique and then do it in a completely like super stylized way. It's not applicable information for more people, but like just using those rules, like that those rules can be bent to whatever style. And like I said many times, like when you are learning to do a difficult material like water, for example, that doesn't mean that all of your paintings need to be photorealistic at all. It's just that like when you have that information, you have so many more options, and realism is very rarely the best way to improve some story, but you can take these properties and rule sets and just like pick the most efficient ones for the thing that you are conveying through your art. So I don't want to push anybody to do like that level of realism in every piece. It's just like when you're doing studies and learning new things, it's the best way to have as many options as possible when it comes to your own art. I know I could do these flat and then skew them into perspective, but I don't want to be that fussy with this, because then it would also go into a completely different style that would require tons and tons of detail rendering later. And while that is an option, I don't think for this specific painting it would add that much, because obviously this train doesn't exist. I'm not trying to sell this off as a alternative reality, a photograph. It's just an idea that I want to convey through this painting. And for those reasons, I can just like enjoy the painterly qualities of it and let that be part of the storytelling. So the parts that aren't realistic, like it's kind of like my way of telling you that like there was this awesome train that I saw in my imagination, and this is what it looked like, instead of trying to put you into this place and make you think that like you are here seeing this train. But you are hearing like my excited story about the train that went by, and it had this entire house built on it. Oh, I was just talking about my grandma. She only considers artworks with real subjects as art. That's very conservative. I think your grandma might need to be taken to some art museums. Can you post a link to the Discord channel or one of the mods? We don't have mods. I am the mod, I guess. But when you scroll through the channel posts, check the posts that are for members, and those have a Discord link. I can promise Tuko that in the next post that I will post, In the next membership post, I will add that link so you can hop on quickly. It's always the same link, so if you find one of the older posts that has that invite link, it still works. I wish that I knew like the recent link that I posted, that I could refer to that, but sorry. It's my fault. I'm pretty sure that like in the recent like announcement for a feedback session, I posted it. So I was thinking of like putting the mailbox here on the side of the train, but actually it would probably make more sense for it to be here inside this. But if it comes out, then that doesn't make sense. Maybe the mailbox should be like just one of those slots. Here you push the mail through. Like this. Instead of like wasting my entire life on the wheels, I'm just going to do one from the front. And this is going to be an extremely cheap trick, but I love cheap tricks. So that's a cheap trick to make a round looking shape that is not actually round. Of course, you can make your shapes look perfect if that's your thing. But even though there are these tools that can make things look more realistic than they otherwise would be, I think that's also a design choice. Like when you want to make things to be like handmade. Okay, that's my wheel. And now I'm going to create a spacing for it by adding snapping. And then I'm going to repeat this spacing a few times. I'm gonna leave the original and then bump up the drawing guide opacity, because I really need to see this. Turning off the snapping, and in freeform mode I am using the edges of the canvas to just judge the vertical distance, and I am setting this upper line here. And I am following the green line. Again, I'm using the corner of this entire canvas to judge the vertical lines. I think they are vertical enough, and then I'm just using these middle handles to pull the wheels into place. So not the corners, but the middle handles, and the entire thing is kind of automatically on these tracks, which keeps the same perspective. Because good luck doing this freehand. That's the cheap part, because I absolutely would not be able to do that, and I don't have the patience to do that, and also I don't respect the skill of doing that enough to put effort into it. It's not that important. It's a very low contrast thing, like hidden by all this like garbage of machinery. So I'm not going to waste my entire life on doing that one single thing. Here I can use that reference, which is this image. And I was really fascinated by this like massive chunks of machine on the top of wheels that are not just for center points of the wheels, but they cover these like large areas of them. So you see less than half of the wheel, you just see that like tiny little arc. I have a question about this technique. I tried to duplicate and scale reshape perspective objects, but they always become blurred. I thought it's a bug in Procreate. It's not. It's when you go into this transform mode. Look at this like top right corner. Can you see here? Here you want to be in either bilinear or bicubic. I mean bilinear mode. And when you are doing the transformation, like whenever you're doing any transformations, you always, not just in Procreate, but in any application that is not a vector-based program, always scale down. Never scale up, always scale down. And sometimes the scaling might look blurry when you are doing the scaling, but only when you let go of the scale, then the application renders that scaling result on. So it is not a bug in Procreate. But for example, if you use nearest neighbor mode and then you scale up something, then bad things will happen. But if you scale up things, for example, you are not going to have the resolution in the original shape that you are scaling up. So the program cannot invent the pixels that aren't there. So everything is going to look stretched and blurry, because that information that you are trying to scale up, that detail doesn't exist. I'm going to invert this so that I see what I'm doing. I'm just nudging it down by tapping on the screen. Tapping on the screen multiple times and then making another one. I'm going to scale this up a little bit, but I'm just tapping under the selection to pull this down as well. And now I'm going to into freeform transform mode and then scaling it down. And these are the size of the tracks. Just grabbing the sky color and letting that reflect on these tracks over here. Just a second. Please don't repeat the same lines. Do we need to manually put in our ground plane and sky when we set up our perspective grid guidelines? When you do your first two vanishing point lines, those first two lines are immediately connected by the horizon line. That is the deep blue line in the drawing guide. Here I'm just gonna show it. So that blue line that you see here in the middle, that's the horizon line, and that comes after putting down the second vanishing point. And unless your camera angle is tilted, please make sure that that is always actually horizontal. Will you ever practice human figures? I have, and it's just like not my core interest right now. That's one of those things that you do in art school, that you do live figure drawing all the time, every day, and then you get better at it through repetition. I used to do only character drawings, so it used to be like a really important core skill for me. But these days, I have kind of moved away from that, as I have been more interested in doing environments and doing character designs that are not human characters. I want to be a background artist and learn to draw a background. Where should I start first? Please tell. Love from India. Well, first of all, I don't do background paintings ever. I'm not a background painter. But I do environment paintings, which is a completely different thing. So I will just speak on that experience. When you design environments, those are inherently a combination of like many things in a scene all at once. So it's going to be juggling a lot of different, like just visual library to make interesting looking environments, it needs to be quite large. And to start developing that, I recommend learning it with a set goal of like adding those items into your visual library. That could be, for example, for environment. For example, the landscape course that I am currently doing for Gumroad right now. It starts off with very simple, specific items like rocks and leaves and tree branches and foliage. And the reason why it's done this way is because all of those items are going to be parts of an environment and a landscape. So they, like, you can't learn to do something without actually doing it. And that means, like, for environment paintings, that you need to add every individual piece into your visual library. And in that process, I recommend also thinking about the detail level of each item. Because with environments, it becomes really clear quite early on that you can't make everything as detailed as humanly possible, because that will not translate into a great environment piece. The landscape will not have a story and it will not have a focus unless you give that focus through the way that you depict elements in your piece. So when you do those exercises, keep that in mind. And one way to do this is to, for example, like have time limits, and also try to tell a story through the environments. Like when you go and see a landscape that is truly memorable and something that people will talk about and remember, the environments tell a story. You need to have a main character, you need to have supporting characters if it's a very detailed piece that all underline the same theme and story in their own ways. And to get comfortable telling those stories, like one very easy way to get better at that skill is to always name your paintings and look for that theme when you are doing the landscape piece. If you're just learning by yourself, like the best advice that I can give you is to go outside and draw or paint trees. Paint trees over and over. Anybody who has done the landscape course assignments will know that there are multiple like composition elements and storytelling elements that you can learn by just simply getting good at like drawing trees and learning to emphasize different things about them. And it will also bring those simplification skills that are needed to bring the focus into your story and the way that you are seeing the environment. And by characters and side characters, I don't mean actual people or creatures. I mean the pieces of the environment, the pieces of the landscape. They alone should be enough to tell that story. Not that you need to have people in there. If you look at any like great landscape artists, they always have a specific type of relationship to the types of scenery that they are depicting, and that is the theme that they are repeating through it. Or it might be tied to the history, that you can have a landscape that is just tree bark without even foliage. And there's one Finnish painting that is like that, and it's a very like powerful, like hidden political message in that piece. And that's the reason why it's not just a picture, it's art that is remembered. Where I can learn about perspective. Well, I have made several videos about perspective, but honestly, like you can just like Google 1-point perspective and then learn to do 1-point perspective. And then you can Google 2-point perspective and then two images in 2-point perspective, like any street image or street scene nearby. Like that's like good enough to do those practice pieces using that reference that hopefully you have taken yourself. And then you have already added 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective into your whole library of skills. For example, I did a video on 1-point perspective that I think is very informative, so check that out. It also has trains, but don't do train tracks because you will curse me for that later, because I remember when I was doing that train station in that 1-point perspective video. Oh dear lord, that was rough. Because train tracks are really difficult to paint from pretty much any other angle than this one. This also goes to that thing that I was talking about earlier, that when you are choosing your subject, kind of like understand already where the difficult and challenging parts are going to be. Like pick your battles, like what kind of battles do you think are important? For the piece that you are doing. If, for example, doing train tracks in 1-point perspective is absolutely necessary for you to get your point across in the piece that you are doing, then even if it takes time, then it's worth the effort. But for example, if you're doing a painting about a girl wearing a specific design jacket that you thought of and you want to show that design, and then you suddenly decide that, like, what if I do this in a 3-point perspective with a tilted angle? Now that's inherently going to be more difficult than if you did just the design and didn't do any sort of like vanishing points for that illustration at all. So is that important to show the piece? Probably not. Is it going to make the painting more difficult? Absolutely. Is it going to make the design stand out? If not, then maybe you should not do that. Because there are always ways to make your painting in a more difficult way that doesn't make the painting actually look any better. And I would always advise against that. Jason say, I recommend checking out the perspective video where I have that train station in the thumbnail about 1-point perspective. I think that's a really good place to start, so I would recommend that one. What kind of brush are you using today? I am using Blueberry brush. This is from Process for Painters. Okay, so now I made that duplication of this train car, and I set it into lighten layer. It's blurred, and I set a black layer mask on it. And with this, I can paint over these like tiny holes in the area of this train car that I want to be smooth. And you see that it's not erasing my brush strokes, but it's adding light values into those dark dots. And the overall impression is that like I still get to keep all of my brush strokes, but I can make this area look smoother. Okay, since I like went through that like whole process of like talking about environment painting and how to get started, I am going to like repeat this one thing, and people who have been like seeing any of my live streams before already know this, so I'm going to be quick, so I'm not an angry old man yelling at the clouds. But if your like intent in art is to do landscape paintings, do not call them background paintings. Because if you went to an art gallery and you saw a landscape, you would never say that like this is a nice looking background painting. Stop it. Language matters because it also drives your goals. And I think when people, for example, somebody who has been doing like characters mostly wants to learn how to design environments and how to paint landscapes, they approach it like it's some kind of an accessory, that it's some kind of like an ornament that you spread into the background. That's a background, but it's not a landscape. And then they wonder, why are my environments so bland? It's because they don't mean anything. There's no message. There's no emotion. Like, you are not showing us like an alternative way to live your life. You're not showing us some kind of concept that you think is important, or a message or a theme. But when you start demanding those things from your artwork, then it's not going to be finished in your own mind before the story is there. It doesn't matter if everybody doesn't like get that message, but if you look at your own painting and you can see that story in there, that's the kind of like bar that I want you to be setting for yourself. And pretty is not a bar. That's just an adjective. That's the end of the old angry man rant. And I haven't done a background painting in my life. And there are really good, successful, talented background artists out there. I'm not knocking on that skill. I think it's a very good skill to have. And if you're someone out there who isn't doing like any environment art, you can still gain the same benefit from this like whole rant by doing this like one simple thing, and that simple thing that doesn't cost you anything, and you can like 100% learn it right now by just setting yourself this rule that every time that you publish a piece of art, that you always give it a name, and you show other people what that name is when you publish your art. So it isn't just a picture or untitled number 58, but it's a painting that has a name. Think about yourself in an art gallery when you're looking at a painting, and then you look at that leaflet that they give you in galleries. And when that piece that like seems like it's talking to you says untitled, that's just like, it feels a bit like the artist didn't care, or they don't want to include you into that story. They don't want you to know what the painting is about. It feels like you already like showed this curiosity towards that theme by spending all that like attention looking at it. But then if it doesn't have a name, it's like, is there even like a deeper level to this that I'm supposed to be caring about this much, or is it just an image of something? And immediately, if you give your painting a name, you can let people know that this artist was thinking about something when they were doing this. And it's a small thing, and your names can be whatever. But they immediately let people know that you had a story behind all of this, and you weren't just like on autopilot when you were painting the piece. You came here to deliver that message. Maybe this shape is a little bit too thin for the purpose I had in mind. Mikko, do you ever paint things you dislike to kind of make peace with them and see them from a different perspective? Absinthe. I think I'm gonna need a little bit more clarification. I think it's an interesting question, but do you mean like, do I paint things that like I don't like painting, or that I don't like in general? Like coriander. I never paint coriander. I just like to spend a lot of time hating coriander, but like I never paint it. Probably not your question. What would be a difference between landscape and environment art? That's a good question. I think landscape can be any landscape. You go to a gallery and you look at a landscape there. Like, for example, Albert Björnstad, which is one of my favorite painters, did landscapes. Those are landscapes. And if you look at environment art, for example, if you do like concept art, for example, and you do environment art, you are designing environments. Not necessarily like for them to be looked as a painting, but it could be just a design that is gonna go into production. Environment art could... that's the way that it's used in games, at least. But environment art has different kind of like purposes too. Like environment art, for example, production of an animation, could be the design of an environment, that could be concept art for the environment, that is still environment art. But if in an animation, a painting is used as a backdrop, then we are really talking about like actual background paintings, which is a completely different thing. I'm just thinking about these sort of like electric lines above, and maybe this doesn't run on electricity. Maybe it's some sort of like a steam powered or other energy source than the wires above. Like maybe the electricity is coming from the tracks itself or something else, because if I have electric wires up here, it's gonna make it impossible to have a deck where you can walk on, or that would be too dangerous. So I'm just gonna like scrap that idea from my sketch, because I think it's too cool of an idea to have this sort of like a mini balcony on the roof, because the top floors, they are really short. Because if you think about this train, it has to go through all kinds of tunnels, and given the level of technology that the rest of the train seems to have, it can't be that easy to blow through mountains to have those tunnels in the first place. So to have these two floors, the train has to be under a certain height limit. So the top floors probably have sleeping cabins, because there you are just horizontally. And for that reason, maybe I should add some kind of like shutters for these windows too. Something maybe that you can pull down and cover the windows so you can get some proper sleep. I'm gonna shut down halfway through this one, and then just show lids on these. that's just on top of the window and the window is underneath it. Where do I have my plants? I want most of the plants to be like kind of short and growing on these planters so that they don't fly all over the place when the train is moving. It's coming together slowly, but I think the idea is like emerging. I actually meant exactly the coriander kind of thing. I was thinking whether I would maybe be less terrified of cockroaches if I painted them in a way I like. For example, just eat a cockroach. Show it how dominant you are. Art Stuff is saying make a bridge, but Art Stuff doesn't know that these are non-driving live streams. I love bridges, but if you tell me to paint a bridge, like there's literally nothing in the world that I want to do less right now than a bridge. I'm sorry, and also like absolutely not sorry. But you can do a bridge. I'm sure it will be great because I love bridges. Bridges are great. But about coriander, like painting things that I don't like. I think the bee painting that I had on my wall, like that's one of those things, because like I'm really afraid of bees. Honestly, I've never been stung by a bee, so it might be like just one of those things that like I'm not afraid of like getting a shot. Like for example, I got a vaccination just this week and I wasn't afraid of getting a shot because I have experienced that and I know what it's like. But a bee sting, I don't know how much it will hurt. So like whenever I see like a bee buzzing around me and it has this sort of like aura of like unknownness, that is it aggressive? am I going to be like stung by a bee for the first time in this situation? You don't know, and it's this uncertainty that I find really scary about them. But when I was painting that bee, I really wanted to make it into this sort of like as fluffy and friendly looking as humanly possible, and I don't know if it like made me less afraid of bees, but I love that bee, like that one single bee. I think it's a painting that I love to look at, and I don't feel at all like, oh, it's a bee, I don't want to have it on my wall. I wanted to have it in my living room, by the way, but my boyfriend decided that we can't have an insect painting in our living room, which is a weird random rule that I 100% don't understand at all. Why can't we? Maybe he's even more afraid of them. I don't think so. He's not afraid of them. Like, I'm definitely the hysterical one about those. He's always informing me when I'm afraid of a bee buzzing about that, like, that's not even the type of bee that stings people. Like, it doesn't have a stinger. Like, you're being silly. Kind of like this idea of having that window frame. I do get stiff when I'm painting still for long periods of time. I think we already have like some kind of like a small brain thing happening here. Honestly, I don't think it's like quite as loose as I would like, because it seems like this requires a lot more rendering. After the stream than I was hoping for. But I like the idea. It always helps when you can be the one that is most excited about your own painting. Instead of being the one who says that like, oh, this is not gonna look good or it's gonna be terrible. That's really easy. That's what everybody does. But to be the one who is like the champion of your own idea, who does everything in their power to turn it into a finished painting, that takes actual skill and dedication. Because it's not a skill to hate your own painting. There's nothing new or unique about that. Do you see pixels when you zoom in? Well, I have to zoom in really, really close to see pixels. Now I see pixels. But this is quite a large canvas, so for that reason, it takes a while. But when doing these live streams, I tend to not to work on those like limits of the canvas. For example, for the details, I think I can still bump up the resolution 1000 pixels to both directions and still have maybe enough layers to work on the rendering aspect of this piece, which I'm not gonna be doing here, but it will also go into the territory of like working within the limits of layers. So sometimes I have to do layer management, but because I think that's the kind of work that is so boring to watch, that I try not to include any of that in these live streams, because I don't want to bore you guys by applying the same lighting effect to like 30 layers before I get rid of that one effect and so on. I love painting grassy and mossy areas. They are always just like spa day for the brain. When I was doing that building on fundamentals art course, there, like painting the grass, like that was an entire day of just painting that thing. So there, I think I was like hitting my limit of like, okay, that's enough grass painting. Also, it was at the point of the painting where I had already worked on that piece for like 35 hours or something. So I was like really hitting my limit. Like overall, it's like, what more can I add to this piece without like absolutely destroying what I have built thus far? And while still somehow like doing work that is beneficial for the people who are going to be seeing this later. Um, I don't know if I said this already, but Sticky Art Shorts is saying, I agree. I think by sticking with a painting all the way through to making a finished product is where a lot of the skills are learned. Yeah, by not pushing through is missing out. Yeah, you kind of like, the painting is done. Like, even if you felt frustrated by the process, like by pushing through that part, you get to keep those skills like permanently, forever, for all of the paintings that you make afterwards. So definitely don't miss out on those. And, I fully agree that if you miss out on that, like, you are kind of like missing out the best thing, like, which is like more than just a painting that you are working on. Like, you're missing out on all those skills that like you could use for everything. What do you do by rendering? I don't know what rendering means. Yeah, so rendering, for example, right here, I have this like rough round shape, or I think here is a better example where I have this, I have blocked in the colors, but the transition between these colors, like the brushwork is just like, I don't know a better word to say this, but it's just crap. So rendering is me going in and cleaning up stuff like this. Or for example, all of those windows that you see underneath that dome, those are in the focal point of this piece. So that's a really bad idea to keep that area to be just like suggestive or leave be like that rough looking. So in those elements, like these windows arc shapes, rendering would be like going through each one of those arcs and making sure that they make sense. Like when it comes to those arcs, it might look like something like this, that I'm just like either cleaning it up or that I'm making a template for how one window is supposed to look, and then I go and use free transform mode and transform each one of these windows to be exactly the same. Now I probably don't need to be that hysterical with this, but there is a certain level of polish that is required for this element to read in the way that I intended to read. And that would be rendering work. Sometimes it could be just like adding a highlight where there is no highlight, if that highlight helps that element to read better. Let's render this transition area, because here, like, even though they are low contrast, the brush direction is giving the viewer really conflicting information about the actual shape of this dome. So I'm just fixing these transitions, the brush strokes in here. Like, they don't need to be smoother, they just have to be in the right direction to get that information across. So what I'm doing here, that's rendering. You see those very rough looking clouds in the background? What is needed in there? Rendering. That might be adding more transition colors, that might be adding effects to make, for example, the light seem like it's sinking into those clouds. Now that I said it, I think that could be a good idea to do. So let's do some of that. Where are my clouds? They're all the way up here. But this is all super easy. I cannot underline that enough. I know that like when you start painting, it might seem like these are where the sort of like professional looking thing comes, when you just have an infinite patience for this type of stuff and you know how to make things look like smooth and realistic looking, like wherever possible. But all of this stuff, like once you do it for long enough, like that's really always going to be just as easy every single time. But the design aspect, for example, like what the shape language of this terrain is, and how do I color block all of these different elements, like windows, their window colors and their shapes, so that they are trainy enough to get that idea across. And then am I conveying enough information to make the concept seem interesting? I'm constantly thinking about what it's like to live in these spaces. That part is the real challenge. Because this stuff, like honestly, like it's super fun also. So I'm not saying that like this is not something that you shouldn't do. Like of course, like this is super fun and you should enjoy it. It's awesome. Like rendering is so much fun. The only thing that is more fun than rendering is color editing. And color editing is like the real party, when you can just like enjoy the work that you have already done and then just like push it even further. Like that's really like there's no work involved in color edit. It's just fun and vibes and using the work that you have already done to enhance that whole impact of the piece. That stuff is like all fun and stuff. But here we are starting to have the frame, like the concept, and even after all of that rendering is done, like this train is not gonna look like fundamentally that much different. I think one element that kind of is lacking in visual design here is this door. I think the brown color doesn't work as a design because it's really melting into this copper tone of the rest of the train. So I'm trying to change the color, like basically to something that would work better. Maybe it could be a white door. it would be easy to waste the entire live stream on details such as these. So for that reason, I almost always try to prioritize design in these. When you have this many elements in a piece, it's inevitable that a lot of the design details are just going to like come in the process as I have more and more information. But here I anyway try to like get as close as possible into that like final impact of the piece where I have figured out the whole design and the kind of like main point comes across through the painting. I think I'm kind of already there. It's just that there are so many elements here that I kind of like can't stop painting now, which is also a good thing. Like, it's nice to be addicted to your own work. This also makes it really easy for me to like do those long sessions of painting here at the desk, because when I get excited about something, I just wanna like spend more time in that space and explore that world. Like, I'm already thinking in my head that like, what kind of train stations, like they must be massive, or maybe they are really small train stations and people just have like tons of like small platforms and side tracks where you can take an alternative route if like one of the smaller platforms is being used by parking one of these building train cars in there. Almost like boats have like just small docks, but then there are tons of them. Or is there some area where you can take out the train car from the tracks so that it doesn't clog up the system, and then when you are ready to continue your journey, you can just get hoisted back on the tracks with some type of a mechanism. And if that exists, can I show that somehow? Or at least the rhythm of that type of a lifestyle, can I show that in this painting? Even if the viewers don't like understand every single design choice in there, I think it's still going to be evident when people see work like this that the artist thought about those things. Like, they just didn't make a picture, but they lived in that world and they know the inner rules, how it works. I think that's going to come across in your work if you just like let the world kind of suck you in. And that's also like the most fun part, so why wouldn't you think about those details? I already thought about like how high these stairs are, and they are not going to be like super accessible for other people, so I thought about like adding a handrail to the side of this door, but maybe also building some sort of like a latch for the entire bottom half of this thing to come out, so that there can be a mechanical ramp system. So this part of the train extends to the ground as one single ramp, just to make this entire vehicle more accessible. Because even if the people using this train right now wouldn't need it, they wouldn't have built this entire train to begin with. they would have bought this main frame from some house train car company that just builds these in bulk. And for that company, it's important to think about all kinds of customers and different customer needs. So that part comes out and transforms into a ramp, but on that ramp there are also permanently extended metallic ladders on this other side. So when the hatch is closed, you can just use these to climb into the train if you don't need to use this mechanism to get in. There's a really small portion of this train in this like individual block here next to the front door. But that's the bathroom. That's why it has that kind of like narrow tall window, because you probably wouldn't want to have like a massive window hanging down low. I want to add these fancier looking flowers to these areas that have easy access from inside the train, so that they can be watered and taken care of. And then the lower half of these plants, they don't have flowers in them. They are those types of plants that you just need to kind of like, they need to survive on their own with less care. There's already rainwater that they are exposed to, and they are in areas where they cannot be maintained as often. I'm not super happy with the colors of this portion of the train, but that's honestly something that I will just need to test and test. Maybe the rooftop is adding a little bit too much height to it. I don't know. Or it could be just like a fun area to like build this fence around so that people can walk around the entire deck. I think that could be. If I can imagine myself like enjoying doing the activities that the environment design kind of like caters to, then those are the ideas that I usually go with. Basically, like I'm putting myself as a character in this world, just using this train, going places, or not going places. I really love being in a train, like going anywhere. Because when you're in a train, nobody really expects you to be like useful member of society in any way. You can just paint on your iPad as long as you want, or like play video games or write whatever you need to write. Sometimes I write videos on trains. But I always think that it's relaxing because I don't ever feel like I have to. I can always say that like, couldn't do it. I was on a train. And it would sound like a sensible sentence to use. This is a very low fence, but like it can't be like that much larger. I might increase the height of like those top floor sleeping cabins a little bit. because you also don't want to like be out there walking and feeling like you might be like decapitated at any moment. That doesn't sound chill to me. Tuko is asking, is there a typical canvas size and DPI you prefer to use in most of your artworks, Mikko? Well, I think because I'm doing so many videos on YouTube that I tend to prefer horizontal canvases because it's so difficult to make a thumbnail even out of a good vertical painting. Like for example, like I fully understand why the styles video doesn't have that many views. It's just that because it's a very vertical painting, like it doesn't make for a great thumbnail. So sometimes like I just make horizontal paintings just so that it would look good as a YouTube thumbnail. Like this is basically almost the exact aspect ratio of a YouTube thumbnail. But when it comes to resolution, I usually before I decide the resolution, I think about like how many layers do I need for it, and then I make the resolution based on that. For example, when I was doing the sheep painting, that was like the absolute like near limit of how much my iPad can take when it comes to layers. So for that painting, I already knew that like I'm only going to need one layer. That's it. I'm going to be doing the color edit in Photoshop anyway, so I don't need any editing room either. Hey Chandler. This is Procreate, in case somebody was wondering. I'm just looking through my train reference photos, the same one that I showed you earlier. I want to add some of those like cords and pipes. Many of them are like on the outside of the train. And they're following the forms of the train itself. I think this might be like one of the water systems. So I don't want to like put it into the lowest half of the train. So that's why it's in this middle ground. So everybody is standing on their reserves of water. And that's why it's going into the kind of like desk level. On the first floor. Yep. And here I'm adding one more. This one I'm routing underneath here. Because it's going into the bathroom area right here. Same height level. Silently painting bathroom pipe shadows for 5 hours. That should be the name of this stream. Like honestly, like I'm going like way into like too much detail. I'm just excited about it, and I can see that like that sort of like lived in look slowly starts emerging as I'm working on these details. Evening, Iris. I wanted this live stream to be like a little bit different time than I usually do. That's because I really don't like the idea that like all my live streams would be always inaccessible to people living on some other part of this planet, because I'm always streaming in the middle of the night or something. But despite me drinking coffee here, it's 11 already here. Oh my god. Every time that like I'm doing a live stream and then when I touch some buttons, like this entire screen goes into this crazy mode, which is horrifying, but it might mean that I need to end the live stream soon. I don't wanna end in a computer crash. I see that the stream software is still working somewhat. Maybe I need to try and press more buttons. No, nothing is working anymore. Nope. I'm just gonna wait for a second to see if it starts working, but if it doesn't, I might need to end the stream here because the entire screen just totally froze. I honestly have no idea what's happening here. Oh, now it came back. Oh my god. So Tuko is saying, I'm in the US, so usually your streams are, yeah, at the opposite time zone. Sorry about that. It's also that my boyfriend is a doctor and I really don't want to kind of disturb his normal rhythm by doing a live stream here in the middle of the night. Otherwise, I could do a live stream, I guess, like if I was like completely silently painting here in the middle of the night. I don't know if anybody would tune in for a stream like that. But obviously I can't keep him awake and have him go to work the next day completely destroyed. I mean, I'm completely useless when I don't have a good night's sleep. No worries, I just watch the on-demand stuff. Yeah, the live streams are never gone. They are all on the membership. I used to have them everywhere, but YouTube really doesn't like that, which is a shame. But I do take the ads always off before putting them on the membership. Whoa. A drawing assist is sometimes surprising if it takes you to a wrong direction than you were intending. This is a 2-point perspective piece, so the vanishing points are pretty far off each other's lines, especially up there. But in this region, if I do vanishing point assisted lines, it's really difficult to like pick between these two. Are you putting people in there? Who knows? People might already be in there. probably don't have enough time to paint it properly, but I thought that like this area would have a little bit of like extra room for like a tiny balcony. It curves inward a little bit, but it still has enough floor space so that you can stand there and maybe have a coffee. I think this train probably like moves really slowly, because if your entire lifestyle is living in these tracks and having your house in constant motion, you really don't need to go that fast to get to places like quite quickly, because like you're never stopping to do your normal life things. And also, if the pace is slow enough, it's more safe for all of these different kinds of house cars to slowly glide along these tracks. So I want to make it apparent, just like from the visual design choices of what kind of like decorations and plans this house has, that like this isn't a vehicle to get to places, like this is a vehicle to exist in a state of just constant movement. I want this top part to be like wooden instead of this main frame, because as I was saying earlier, the main frame comes from a factory that like builds these sort of home train cars, and even though their selection might be different for different types of families, they still have this option of like customization. So even though the buildings have to go under very strict like height limits to go through all of the tunnels and stuff, you can still add your own type of like sleeping expansion cabinets on the second floor, or you can use it for other things. Some people prefer to sleep in their home trains and then just use this space just for storage. I wanna play around with the placement of the clouds a little bit. I know it's not that important for the story, but it's important for the composition. And then maybe, maybe finally I can go to sleep as well. I love that TV is like looking at me from his dog or her dog bed. Like so sleepy, like half asleep, eyelids closing constantly, but still slightly paying attention to what am I saying here. Does this need corgi intervention somehow? I think the more sort of like round billowy shapes of clouds, they like bring that sort of like extra optimism here. That I think fits the story better than these. If you think about the shapes of trees that like they always have in horror movies, like the same kind of like shape language communicates the story and mood applies to everything. Like if you're adding rocks to your scene, design the rocks. Like think about what kind of shape conveys the purpose of that scene the best. And when it comes to rocks, like there's really only few types of ways that rocks are formed. So it's really handy to add that to your visual library and do some practice from reference. Because when you have the rock types in your visual library, it's just like a matter of picking the right one. The sky gradient is quite harsh, but it sort of works here. By the way, if this was like concept art, like this is now 3 hours, like this would be absolutely more than enough for a concept art piece, like in actual production, to show to the rest of the team. Like, okay, for this purpose, I have done this design. I think it could work for this world because of X and Y reasons. And then you go through all of these stories that you have built in your head while you are thinking about how the world works, how the people live here, how they like stop for water, where do they tank the water, and so on. Like, how do people go into the train, how they use them, like where do the trains come from, like how do they stop, and how fast they go, like all of these things you would communicate with the team. And it doesn't have to be like super rendered piece of like promotional art if you're doing concept art. Like this is good enough for that purpose, and only if you use that piece for like selling the project later, like if you're using that concept artwork to sell that game, then you would use like 40 hours to do the insane level of rendering or like collaborating with 3D artists to make that like as visually like polished as humanly possible. But for idea generation, just like showing it in a picture form like this, that's enough. By the way, there's one element that I didn't do at all, and honestly I'm not so sure if I even want to have it in here anymore, but in my sketch I had this like train like grill in front of the train here. And I was thinking that like this could be some sort of like safety system in case there is something on the tracks, or if the train is moving during winter, for example, to kind of like take the impact into this like cheap, easily replaceable grill. So in case you, for example, crash into hard ice with this, and even if this gets damaged, it's a really cheap part of the train to replace, but it will protect the rest of the house from the brunt of the impact. Now that I'm actually like explaining this, it does sound like it's an important part of the train to be. Also, I think this could also be used to sell that kind of like traininess of this shape. So maybe this is an idea that I will keep. it's a really quick block-in, but I think you get my point. It also makes the balcony kind of like less floaty looking. Maybe it should be attached to this box underneath. I think that makes more sense. Paulina, it's so awesome that you painted this train so fast. And yeah, someone mentioned before, it would be nice to see some tree tutorial from you. I'm gonna be honest, like right now I'm working on those landscape course materials, and I am currently doing a week where I'm doing foliage from far away and then close in details. So that's going to be a lot of work on making that tutorial series. So I think that's going to be a super detailed tree tutorial, and right now members can already access it, but I already asked what kind of a tutorial you guys would like to see next. So that is the water tutorial, so that's going to come free to this channel next. I hope that's okay with you guys. And for a tree, I really can't condense all of those things that are already in the landscape course into one tutorial, but I will do my best to do some kind of a single condensed thing. But honestly, if you want to learn to do trees, then I really recommend going outside, especially if it's still warm where you live, because all of those assignments in the landscape course, like this is spoilers, but all of them involve drawing real, actual trees. So that's the way that I would teach it. And to learn it, I would recommend starting from small and then expanding, just so that you don't have too many things to learn into one single exercise at once, and then slowly expand from there. And that's true for trees as well. If Mikko adds any characters in the piece, it'll probably be bears. Yeah, that's a real plot twist. Maybe there's a bear just like about to open the door and it's wearing this sort of like cute conductor outfit. That'd be nice. Who knows? But if I don't do that, like, you can make the characters whatever. So I think that's the beauty of not doing characters, but just having like human scale elements. I'd raise my family in that train as long as it made frequent stops at libraries. Yeah, maybe it doesn't have to make stops at libraries, but one of my first videos that I ever did was this moving library. That is this like glass frame building library that is constantly on the move. So maybe it doesn't have to like necessarily stop. Maybe the library can sometimes like ride along the tracks and people can jump into the library to borrow a book and then hop back into their home. Okay, thank you everybody for joining this live stream. I'm sorry that it went so long, but like it's a very complex concept. So I don't know. I don't think I can do this type of an idea faster because there was so many things to just figure out, and obviously like it needs a lot of that rendering and polish and like fixing the perspective and stuff, but that stuff is easy. I will always say that that is the easy part. Even if it takes the longest, it's still the easiest part. But this design aspect, that was the hardest, and I think it's done. I think the design is there. So thank you again for being here, and I don't know if I should say sorry that I've painted this so long. I loved painting this, and I loved talking with you guys. So I hope you got some art done, and I will see you in my next video, which is going to be that water tutorial. And I will keep that tree tutorial in mind, but after I have done the landscape art course materials, then I will also be in a better position to talk about that subject in a way that is more condensed and like more digestible for YouTube, because those videos always need to be different than the ones that I do for my art courses. Nobody would watch an assignment video on my YouTube channel because like those assume that the viewers will have to work. My landscape course isn't the kind where you watch the videos and then you somehow magically know how to paint landscapes. They are all like based on assignments that the students who do the course have to do to get the information. Okay, again, thank you and bye. There's a lag in this, so it's always really difficult to stop the stream because I don't want to stop myself mid-sentence.